possess, and write them down on your piece of paper. I will do this with you.
So Katie's, I know for a fact. I know these. Katie, yours has to be creativity.
Yes.
Because you are a musical genius.
Oh, yes.
I would say love, because you just emanate love everywhere that you go.
Yes.
And I would say bravery, because you boldly and bravely overcame a lot of difficulty to become a therapist and a guide for other women that needed support and help.
Thank you, Rabia. That's exactly right. You guessed it right on. What about yours? What are your top three?
I would say leadership, because I'm all about women empowering leaders. I would say spirituality, because that's where I get my grounding. It's really important for me. And I would say appreciation of beauty. I like all things pretty.
So now what you're going to do is, once you've got your top three, take that piece of paper, fold it up, and put it in your pocket. And as you go out from here today, whenever you're faced with making a choice or a decision, take the piece of paper out of your pocket and look at your top three traits.
Share them in the chat, please.
Yeah, share those in the chat if you will. We would love to hear from you. And when you're making a decision, just ask yourself, what choice, what decision will get me closer to my top three character strengths? What choice or decision might take me further away? As long as you're leaning into your top three character strengths, you can't go wrong.
Okay.
So that's about...
Give everybody a couple
let's see if anybody wants to respond to that.
All right. Okay. Are we going to wait till the end to get to the chat? Okay, well, let's keep moving.
Okay, sure.
So Katie is an expert on development. And what her expertise is in adolescent, like late adolescent, 17, 18, 19, and then that transition into young adulthood, 20, 21, 22, your early 20s.
Right.
So Katie, walk us through what the audience members, the girls that have joined us today, where might they be with their development?
Well, so if we go back to the beginning of high school, this is what Erik Erikson, a famous psychologist, determined to be the identity versus identity confusion stage of development. And what that really means is kids are asking themselves, what group do I belong to? Where do I fit in? Trying on different hats to try to see what seems to fit. So it's the beginning of, you know how when you're about 11 or 12 years old, maybe, you kind of come to this realization, oh, I'm not my parents. And you start to realize I have my own separate self. And this time during adolescence is when you're going to really cultivate your sense of identity. And this is important to do before we move into the next stage, where many of you are right now, which is young adulthood. And this stage by Erikson is called intimacy versus isolation.
Are you talking about sex?
No. In this context, we are talking about intimacy, meaning not sexual, not necessarily romantic. Of course, that can be a part of it. Certainly that can be a part of it. But what we're really talking about is the ability to cultivate whole, healthy relationships with other people in an interconnected way.
Katie, I've heard a lot about toxic relationships. What are those?
Toxic relationships are usually defined as when the relationship is out of balance. So we've all had those sort of friendships where it feels like one person is doing more of the giving and one person is doing all the taking. That's when the intimacy, the true intimacy, is not really happening. So those are the relationships that we have to sort of weed out in our lives. According to Erik Erikson, true intimacy really comes about when neither person's personality is getting lost. So when you can maintain a sense of yourself, I can maintain a sense of my identity, and you share with me, I share with you. It's a reciprocal back and forth.
So I can be my authentic, real self.
Right.
And you can validate and accept that, and you feel safe being your total authentic self with me.
Right, and that's the whole stage of development. That's what we're trying to do right now.
What if we fail at this phase? What if we don't establish close connections? Then what results?
Well, with any stage of development, if there are milestones that don't happen, like the identity versus identity confusion or intimacy versus isolation, it's likely to come back up later in life.
Interesting you say that.
Yeah, I want to hear about your story. So what happens when you're not part of the white majority and you're trying to cultivate an identity? What is that like?
So I'm so glad. First, I want to say how excited I am to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you.
You are so passionate about empowering women and for women to fully develop and stand in their full identity, their authentic self. And to be here to be able to share my story as an ethnic minority and some of the things that I experienced and to help others learn from my story. Yes. What a gift.
Which is a fascinating story. I've heard it before and I'm fascinated by your story, Rabia.
I'm so glad to share it, Katie.
Thank you.
So, Katie, my story begins. I am the daughter of immigrant parents that came from India. And they migrated here to Los Angeles, California after leaving British-ruled colonial India after there had been a lot of war. So they came here with a lot of ancestral trauma, anxiety, and fear. And that's what I was born into. And the way that they managed their fear when they came to this country was to live in a lot of control, to have a lot of control religiously, and to raise our family with a lot of religious fear and control. And I was raised in a Muslim home, and while I don't believe that the faith itself advocates for this, I think that through the lens of people that come from that kind of ancestral pain and trauma and practice the faith, they become very extremist. And that's how I was raised. Katie, religious injunctions dictated every intention, every thought, every action in my life. My religious identity became my soul identity. It's what was expected of me. It was really the reference point from which all of my life's experiences were measured. It was a really strict and very unforgiving. I see the world in bright, intense colors. I'm the ambassador of happiness. You know this about me. But as a little girl, it wasn't that way. I was expected to see the world in black and white. Things were either evil or good. Emotion was the nemesis, the temptress. It was the devil in the eyes of religion. And joy and entertainment were forbidden. Music was not permitted. Dance was not encouraged. Katie, my body as a female, the message I was told is that it needed to be concealed. At a time that my sexuality was blossoming, the message was clear. Your body is shameful.
Right, I was just thinking shame.
Lots of shame, and it needs to be muted. Rabia, the message was, Rabia, turn down the volume. Don't speak. Don't say what you feel. Don't move your body. Cover your body. Sit still. Don't express who you are. Don't express who you authentically are. Because Rabia, who you authentically are, is flawed and sinful. And it was a really scary place for me.
Really hard.
And I had to make peace with this life that I was living as a child. And I learned to embrace the dutiful servitude that I was expected to, share with my family. I was expected to raise my sister, take care of my family. I was in a traditional nuclear Indian family, and that is what was expected of me. And so I rose to the occasion. I did what I was expected to do.
So you went along with your family of origin's wishes.
What they expected my identity to be, fully. I went on to have an arranged marriage in my early 20s and went on to be a dutiful wife and took on that identity. And then I went on to be a mother and I took on that dutiful identity. But eventually, Katie, the day came that I died. I literally went into heart failure the day that my son was born. And it was a wake-up call for life. It was a wake-up call for my life. It was a wake-up call to tell me, Rabia, you are not living the life that you are destined to live. And it was another scary time.
Right.
Because, Katie, I came to a crossroads in my life. I came to a point where I said, can I continue to live in this identity that's not truly who I am? Or can I take this huge leap of faith and go into a place that feels like I'm willing to explore and unearth who Rabia really is.